Okay, today I'm going to tie a wasp. The wasp is a very useful fly, especially in September time, and you'll be surprised. You'd think that the trout would be afraid to take it, that they'd get stung, but believe it or not, they take it with relish. Okay, I'm going to use a black silk. And the hook I'm going to use is a Camazan B400. It's a size 12. And I'm going to tie this in a style that I like very much, what we call the fore and aft style. So I put a smallish Grizzle Hackle at the back end here. Fore and aft means hackle at the fore, at the front, and one at the rear, the aft. So that's it, the rear one on. Nip off the bits. I'll park my silk up the front for a moment and I'll wind on this hackle. Now I tend to put this well around the bend. Just make sure I get in the right way. I put it right around the bend because it does help to support the rear of the fly, and I like a Grizzle Hackle on a wasp because it somehow goes with the colours of it. I'm just winding this around. Now this hackle can be trimmed underneath if necessary, which is what I do on some of my fore and aft flies. I trim it underneath on the moth, the sedge, because I like the sedge to sit low in the water. But it's not too important on the wasp. But it can be done if you want to do that. Okay, just secure this hackle, this rear hackle. I'll be tying in some materials at the back here in a moment. Okay, so that's the rear hackle on, and now I'm going to tie in a couple of ribs. I'm going to use this gold holographic rib, which again, we all know the colour of a wasp. It's a yellowy, so if we're going to use a rib, we'll use a goldy type rather than the silver. And the other rib I want to use is something to give a bit of colour in the fly. So I've trimmed a hackle stalk. I've trimmed a black hackle stalk each side with the scissors. And I'll tie this in. Like that. I can see the stub of the holographic there, so I'm just going to remove that little stub, and I'll go back to the rib to tie it in. Okay. That's the two ribs on, and now I'm going to use, I've got a sheet of yellow foam here, and I've cut out a thin strip like this. From this side you can see where I've cut it from. So I'm going to now tie in a thin strip of square foam. You'll see I've tapered it a little just to tie it down. Tie it down well. The wasp is a bulky fly. I take it up to about there, and now I'm going to wind this body. This foam does make a nice body. I put a bit of pressure on it to start with to get a taper. And you just simply wind it around like this. You don't have to worry too much about it. I'm just going to do 3/4 of the fly, of the shank of the hook, to about there, where I now secure it good and proper. And I'll nip off the surplus. There's probably enough there to tie another body, but the foam is so cheap it doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm going to use number 1 rib now to rib this body. The Wasp has got this sort of ribby appearance about the body. So that goes there. And also I'm going to rib with the holographic. I'm going to rib the opposite way, because this gives a bit of flash and a bit of protection to the rib. And I'll tie that down like that. Before I put on a wing. Okay, nip off the surplus. And I'm just going to tidy up a little bit here. Right, I'm going to use a wing which I've cut from 1 feather. I've used a wing cutter, cut it out, then nipped the end out. So you can see the wing, and that'll go on like this. Just tie it on top. I'll show you that wing. I'll tilt it. Can you see how the wing is? Now, I know a lot of my colleagues don't bother with the wing, and they do just as well with it. Now I'm going to put on a bit of a thorax, which you know I like on a fly. Tie in this thorax, which is peacock herl. Snip off the surplus here. And I'll be putting another Grizzle Hackle on the front. This is a surprisingly good fly, and as I say, you would think the sting would stop the fish from eating it, but believe me, it does not. Okay, now I'm going to put on a larger hackle on the front. Again, it's a Grizzle Hackle. You can see it. It suits this fly very well, the Grizzle Hackle. The Grizzle Hackle is from a Plymouth Rock cockerel. Tie that down, take the stalk back to fully secure it, silk to the front, trace that stalk to cut it out. Okay. Now I'll tie the hackle. Just wind it. Now there's foam in this fly which will help it to float. It is a dry fly, so that's enough on the hackle. Draw things back. and give it a whip finish. Needle into the loop, draw it up, and I'll cut the silk. Okay, touch of varnish. I can see I've got a couple of little stray ones. It won't really matter, but just to be on the safe side. Varnish the head. Just like that. And clear the eye. And that's the wasp. Good fly, especially in September. I've been down by Nichols Run where I've seen the fish taking something on the surface. Not sure what it was. I've watched and watched, and then I could see the wasps floating downstream. Where they come from, I don't know. But they were continuously going down. I put on the closest imitation I had, and I started to take fish. Okay, thank you for watching that.